Dr. Anne Thorez is the Senior Director Patient Engagement at Voisin Consulting Life Sciences. She has over 25 years of extensive experience within the pharmaceutical industry, specializing predominantly in renal and rare diseases. Her career spans various crucial roles, including supporting VCLS clients in formulating sustainable patient engagement strategies deeply integrated into the product development process. With a background in biology, Dr. Anne has established herself as a pivotal figure in patient engagement consulting, delivering strategic guidance to healthcare companies to enhance their patient-focused initiatives. Her expertise lies in fostering collaborations between clients and patient organizations, offering comprehensive analysis of patient landscapes. Throughout her career, Dr. Anne has advocated for integrating patient perspectives into regulatory and HTA pathways, emphasizing the importance of understanding patient views and preferences in clinical trial designs, recruitment, and retention strategies. Her extensive experience, ranging from direct customer interaction to strategic roles in multinational groups and startups, has enabled her to provide meaningful insights and create holistic patient engagement roadmaps aligned with clinical, regulatory, and market access objectives. Dr. Anne is a valued member of the Avicenna Public and Patient Involvement Task Force, showcasing her commitment to driving patient-centered approaches within the healthcare industry. Dr. Anne, we thank you from the bottom of our heart for taking the time to present to us your valuable knowledge towards our participants.
So thank you so much for inviting me to this meeting, and I was really looking forward to participate to it. And it's great that I'm just following Aditya, because we are talking about patient centricity. And as far as I'm concerned, I would like to discuss today about patient engagement in general, and asking a question that could be a little bit trigger. Is patient engagement a myth or an indisputable necessity? And I would like to start my talk with a little provocative example. So if you decide as an end user of a solution to buy a car, you will buy a car according to your needs, according to your preference. So if, for example, you're a young person looking for speed and enjoying a beautiful car, you will go definitively for example, a sportive car. And if you are a family father, family mother of several children with dogs and enjoying going on holidays with your car, definitively you will go for a car which is more comfortable, a familiar car. Another example, if you would like to buy a sofa, again, you will look for what you need and what you prefer. So if you like to have beautiful things, modern things, you will go for a sofa, which is more a kind of part of the part of the house, I will say, for the beauty of the house. But if you're looking for comfortable things when you would like to look at TV or reading a book with a good glass of wine, for example, you will go for the right side of the images, a very comfortable one. So that means that as an end user of a final solution, you would like to go to something that answers your need. And until recently, the only final end user who was not able to have the same rights, I will say, was the patient. And hopefully now things are changing. Since many years now, we see really a clear progressive trend, and we see that more and more the patient is considered as part of the full image of the expertise for developing medication. But what is exactly patient engagement? We can ask ourselves, because we heard a lot about patient centricity, patient engagement, but what is it? When do we need to go to patient engagement? With whom? Why? How? So these are a lot of questions that many persons are asking themselves at this moment. And it's important to understand that patient engagement is something which is important for every stakeholders who is involved at some level in the development of a product. Could be a drug, but could be also a medical device. So definitely, at the center of the image, at the center of the problem, you have the patient. That's for sure. The patient is really the key and the final user of a proposed solution. But it's also important for the physician who will participate to a trial, physician who will give and who will give the medication to the patient after, when it will be commercialized. For the researchers who are at the start of everything for developing a medication, for, of course, the pharmaceutical industry, regulators and HTA bodies, they are looking more and more about patient engagement. We will see in the later in the presentation, and the society in general, because if the outcomes of the patient with a new drug is important, for the society it's important as well, because we are somewhere paying also for this solution. So it's important for every stakeholders. And what I would like to show here is that if you do not take into account the patient experience, the patient perspective in the discussion, in the problematic of developing a medical solution, you might sometimes go with assumption that can guide you to potential wrong decision. And what I would like to illustrate here is that you need to consider the patient as an expert of his disease, and he can bring you insight and perspective which are different than the one regulators, payers, pharmaceutical industry, physicians are thinking about. I will illustrate some of these things here. If you are, for example, in a preclinical stage, and you are deciding the type of administration route for the medication and the dose frequency. And just an example, the pharmaceutical society decide that they will go for a pill. And it appears that if you're discussing with patient organization, they can tell you, you know what, with this specific disease or with this specific type of patient, for example, children or old person, swallowing pills might be difficult. Would be better to go for a liquid form, or would be better to go for a subcutaneous form, injection, so whatever. But it's important because it's only the patient who can really say what is the best for him. And we saw it. We saw it in many cases in neuromuscular disease, for example, where the swallowing things is very important, while still continuing to go with pills, or the size of the pill for a children population. So this is one example at a very, very early stage of the product development, where the patient can give his insight. I took also here the example of the regulatory stage. Most of the time, the balance between the risk and the benefit is taken by the sponsor and also FDA, EMA. They are deciding what could be really the right level between the benefit and the risk. But again, why not asking to patients? Because the patient is the only person who can say, I would like to take this risk if it happens that the benefit is so important. There's a very important example which has been given by the Parent Project Muscular Dystrophy. They wrote to the FDA to say, you know, and I will read what is stating that example. They stated to the FDA, in the absence of any approved treatment for Duchenne at all, we, as community of Duchenne patient and family, express the willingness to accept a certain degree of uncertainty regarding both benefit and risk. Some of the community may be willing to take even greater risk if there's an accelerated rate of benefit beside and beneath progression and vital function and death. So again, the patient can give his own perspective on the risk he's willing to take if the benefit is so important towards the progression of his disease. Another example, during the selection of the primary endpoint in clinical trial, we know how important is the clinical trial, and we will go in that discussion. We are here in an example in the rare neuromuscular field, and the sponsor and physician have decided that the first primary endpoint will be the benefit of the treatment on the lower limbs. And it happens that when they were discussing with patient told them, no, it's not the lower limbs, it's the upper limbs progression and benefit, which is important for us, because if we improve the upper limbs, we will be able to continue to live somewhere more independently, where we will have more autonomy. We can, for example, still continue to cook, to have a child in our arms. We can play piano, we can play on and work on a computer. So again, this is an example where it is important to listen to the patient, listen to the voice of them, and take into consideration that, because it's really important. Again, patient is somewhere the expert of his disease. When we are looking, for example, at the reason why a study can be terminated, and we know how important is the trial, of course, in the development of a medication. In this study, they have looked at the more frequent wording appearing for the reason why a trial was terminated. And it appears that the most frequent words were enrollment, recruitment, patient. I'm not saying here, of course, that the patient is the only reason why a clinical trial is terminated, of course, but he plays an important role sometimes in this problematic. And if you're looking here, this slide, you see that if you underestimate the impact of the patient in the recruitment, in the retention of a trial, you may have some problems. You see, for example, that 30% of the trial are cancelled because of insufficient participation. And what could be the reason of this insufficient participation? Well, different, and we will see it. 30% of patients will drop out before the study ends. 30% of the patients do not consent due to a lack of understanding of the study, the reason, the endpoint. So they do not sign to enter. And you have also a certain amount of patients who are such unhappy with the study location for logistic and problematic reasons that they refuse to enter in a study, or they stop to continue a study. We all know that losing a patient also means a loss of valuable data. We know that failure to retain patient can cause costly delay in a trial. And we know also that lengthy trial will delay the patient access for new drugs and benefit of new drugs. So it's important, it's essential to validate your trial, to validate your endpoint, to validate the logistic, the burden of the trial, to be sure and to identify the elements that may happen and that may lead to the fact that the patient will not enter in a trial. So very, very important, again, to check that. Ask the patient. That's really the message I want to insist on here. The collaboration with sponsor is important, as you have seen here, for example, in the clinical trial building. But it's also very important for the regulators. I'm insisting here a little bit more on FDA and EMA, but any other regulation agency is doing the same everywhere on a global level. I'm just taking these two examples, but there are many, many others. And it's not new that FDA and EMA are considering the patient voice in their decision-making process. They are working with patients since many times, and every year, I will say, there's something new in their approach in order to improve this collaboration, because they have understood that they need to take that to discuss and to reflect on the decision they can take. And so that's something very important. And there are two other examples that I would like to insist on to show the importance of the patient voice at regulatory level. MHRA in UK, they have set since 2021 a project where they are asking to the sponsor to show what they have done in terms of patient engagement in the development of their product. It's a project, it's not mandatory, but they are asking that because the aim of this project at the end of the day is really to show that there's a need to have this input to have a full perspective of decision making regarding a project. And very recently in Holland, in the Netherlands, in Europe, the CCMO, so the organism which is responsible of everything regarding the trial, they have now made it mandatory for every sponsor who is doing a trial in Holland, in the Netherlands, to answer a questionnaire about their level and degree of involvement of patient engagement in their trial process in general. So these things shows the importance that regulatory agencies are taking into account regarding the patient involvement. And if it's not enough, and by what I would like to say also is that at this moment, patient engagement is not mandatory, but it's highly advised by the agency. They are really pushing for sponsors to work with patients. There are other proof on the fact that patient engagement is really important. I just took some example, but for example, FDA has produced in the last years 4 guidance for the industry on the way they have to collect data from patients to really take the best of this data. There's also a lot of initiative to develop and to teach to patients to become patient expert. Many initiatives are there as well. And there's also some initiative to educate pharmaceutical industry on how to perform the best patient engagement and to take the best of return of investment in this way. And of course, teaching and educating pharmaceutical industry about patient engagement is important because it might seem very complicated when you see this kind of graph and where you see here all the place where patient and patient engagement can take place. It's really from the early stage of development, a target product profile, unmet needs, burden of disease, and that can go all along the process of product development until the final launch and the post-commercial launch. And sometimes sponsors, pharmaceutical industry, mostly startup company, they are a little bit lost about that. And they are still looking for investor, for money. They have so many things to take into account. And sometimes they told us when we have them as a client, they said, we have so many things to take into account. Patient engagement is is so far for our consideration, and we don't know when we have to start. We don't know what to do, so there's sometimes they are lost about that, and it's our role of everybody to make it happen in terms of patient engagement, part of the full strategical development, and also explain to them that it's not so complicated, but it needs to be planned before. So this is something that I wanted to tell you about it. And the last part of my talk is, okay, I think that we have seen that it's really important to consider patient as a vocal decisional part in the development of a product. But where are we now? Because we know where we want to go, but are we there already? Where are we? And let's be honest, there's still a lot of things that needs to be done. We are still on a learning curve. We are still progressing. We are still making progress at every step. And definitively, when we are discussing with all categories of decisional part, there's still a need of alignment, transparency, collaboration, and communication. For example, in terms of the regulators, a very frequent feedback from the patient organization and from the industry is that they do not know exactly what the regulators are doing with their data. When it was used, was it used? And if it was used, what was the result of using this data? So more transparency, more communication about the value of the patient data. In terms of the HTA, so in Europe, HTA, it's a country level. They are decided of the benefit of a treatment more on the base of efficiency and return of investment. And the modalities of this HTA, the level of engagement is very irregular in Europe. You have some countries who are really taking into consideration that, others are less. So it's not homogeneous, but it will be more in 2020, 2025, because there it will be first at a European level that it will have a kind of, I would say, decisional that will be taken. And one of the things that I want to insist on is the fact that at this moment we are still working on a kind of silo approach. Everybody is working on his own. There's not enough collaboration to take into consideration everything together in order to, let's say, decrease the duplication of effort, to avoid the fragmented approach and the fragmented collection of data, and also to decrease the burden which is on the shoulder of the patient association, because they need to answer many persons and repeat, and that can lead also to a kind of frustration. And talking about frustration, it's something which is still a reality. Many patient organizations, when we are talking with them, they said, yeah, there's an involvement, an improvement for sure, but it's still a lot of hearing about patient centricity, but still a lot of frustration, because they have the feeling that they are not enough part of the health policy decision-making process. They have the feeling that they are not at the same level than industry, politicians, insurance payers, doctors, and indeed it's not yet the case, of course. And there's also a lot of frustration about the fact that they have the feeling that they give a lot of information, they are informed, sometimes consulted, but not systematically part of a negotiation. And in this slide, it was last week that Stefan Geisel, who is the director of chair of Patient Expert Center, so he's teaching to patients to become patient expert, and he's also a CEO of a European Cancer Organization, and he's really frustrated. And he took this example about building a house, which is built for the young couple that you see that there, but without asking them again their needs and what they want. So we are coming back to what I have shown previously in my presentation. So decisions are taken without patient. And this is really a frustration that patient organizations have at this moment. And if we are looking finally to the pharmaceutical industry, there honestly still a job to be done to educate, to support some of them to say patient engagement. It's not just one shot. It's not just an action that you are doing with organization of patient. It's not just connecting with patient organization. It's working collaboratively with them. It's not just a buzzword, which is something that patient organization think about. It's not just a stamp that you put on the document because you said, okay, I have very quickly asked to a patient to review a protocol of a trial. It's not so expensive because many said to us, yes, but it's expensive. No, in comparison with the full product development perspective, patient engagement is not expensive, but it can give a lot of money save for you if you are doing it correctly. It's not a kicking box exercise. It's really something that you need to take into account in the full picture of your strategical development of product. And very, very importantly, if you want to see the return of investment, both for the patient, for the industry, but also for everybody, you need to start this patient engagement as early as possible. And so my take-home message here is, with this presentation, I hope that I've shown you that patient engagement is not a myth, it's an indisputable necessity. And even if it's not yet mandatory by law, it should be a kind of standard of work within the product development process. It's important for everybody. Everybody needs to have a final solution that fits their own needs. And everybody has specific needs. But it's possible to cover all that needs if it's discussed very early in the process. And you have seen that there's still a lot to be done. Roma was not built in one day. So we are progressing. It's still evolving, but there's still a lot of room of improvement for everybody. Everybody needs to evolve and to improve in the way of working in patient engagement. And having said that, I would like to thank you for listening to me, and hope that you learn or you were enjoying this presentation. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anne. I think we learned the on-ground reality of patient engagement since you have been in the field for over 25 years. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your experience with us. We have one question, Dr. Anne, if it is okay to ask.
Of course.
Okay, so the question is, does an investigator or a CRC or a nurse required to have to understand the psychology of patients? Should they have a knowledge on psychology so that they're able to engage better with patients? What is your opinion?
That's a very interesting question. Of course, when we address to patient, the language that we are using is obviously not the same that the one we are used to have with researcher, with scientific person. It's, for example, I'm just diverting a little bit from your question, but it's an example. It's the reason why when we have a protocol, when we have material, educational material for patient, ICF, informed consent form, it needs to be reviewed by patient to be sure that the language is understandable by the most of the patient, because obviously they have no scientific basis. So we can't use the same wording that we are used to work all together. So that means that, of course, when we are discussing with patient, you need to behave with them on a very natural way first, and also with specific easy wording to be understandable. Do we need a specific psychological approach? We don't need to take psychological course to address to patient. We just need to fit of the reality and to put ourselves in their shoes, saying, okay, here we are discussing with somebody else than the doctors. So just adapt our behavior as we are doing in the common life, I will say. So approach should be very realistic, open, because they like transparency as well, precautionous somewhere as well, of course, but I will say it's be empathic as well. It's important, and you need to think about the fact that when we are speaking about patient and family, they are in a very specific and very difficult condition. So just speak on the way they would like to have, but they need also transparency about what we are telling to them.
Understood. Thank you so much, Dr. Anne, for your time today. I'm sure
Thank you so much.
Have learned so much from you, and a lot of them are again requesting for a copy of the presentation. I think we'll take that from you.
It's perfect for sharing the presentation. No worry at all, and I'm more than welcome. You are more than welcome to contact me with my email address if there's some question that still need to be answered. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Anne.